Chapter 11. Lucy Westenra's Diary.
12th of September. How good they all are to me. I quite love that dear Dr. Van Helsing. I wonder why he was so anxious about these robbers. He positively frightened me. He was so fierce. And yet he must have been right, for I feel comfort from them already. Somehow I do not dread being alone tonight, and I can go to sleep without fear. I shall not mind any flapping outside the window. Oh, the terrible struggle that I have had against sleep so often of late, the pain of sleeplessness, or the pain of the fear of sleep, and with such unknown horrors as it has for me. How blessed are some people whose lives have no fears, no dreads, to whom sleep is a blessing that comes nightly and brings nothing but sweet dreams. Well, here I am tonight, hoping for sleep and lying like Ophelia in the play with virgin pranks and maiden instruments. I never liked garlic before, but tonight it is delightful. There is peace in its smell. I feel sleep coming already. Good night, everybody.
Dr. Seward's Diary.
13th of September. Called at the Berkeley and found Van Helsing as usual up to time. The carriage ordered from the hotel was waiting. The professor took his bag, which he always brings with him now. Let all be put down exactly. Van Helsing and I arrived at Hinningham at 8 o'clock. It was a lovely morning. The bright sunshine and all the fresh feeling of early autumn seemed like the completion of nature's annual work. The leaves were turning to all kinds of beautiful colors, but had not yet begun to drop from the trees. When we entered, we met Mrs. Westenra coming out of the morning room. She is always an early riser. She greeted us warmly and said,
You will be glad to know that Lucy is better. The dear child is still asleep. I looked into her room and saw her, but did not go in, lest I should disturb her.
The professor smiled and looked quite jubilant. He rubbed his hands together and said,
Aha! I thought I had diagnosed the case. My treatment is working.
to which he replied,
You must not take all the credit to yourself, doctor. Lucy's state this morning is due in part to me.
How do you mean, ma'am?
asked the professor.
Well, I was anxious about the dear child in the night and went into her room. She was sleeping soundly, so soundly that even my coming did not wake her. But the room was awfully stuffy. There were a lot of those horrible, strong-smelling flowers about everywhere, and she had actually a bunch of them round her neck. I feared that the heavy odor would be too much for the dear child in her weak state, so I took them all away and opened a bit of the window to let in a little fresh air. You will be pleased with her, I am sure.
She moved off into her boudoir where she usually breakfasted early. As she had spoken, I watched the professor's face and saw it turn ashen grey. He had been able to restrain his self-command whilst the poor lady was present, for he knew her state and how mischievous a shock would be. He actually smiled on her as he had opened the door for her to pass into her room. But the instant she had disappeared, he put me, suddenly and forcibly, into the dining room and closed the door. Then, for the first time in my life, I saw Van Helsing break down. He raised his hands over his head in a sort of mute despair, and then beat his palms together in a helpless way. Finally, he sat down on a chair and, putting his hands before his face, began to sob, with loud, dry sobs that seemed to come from the very wrecking of his heart. Then he raised his arms again, as though appealing to the whole universe.
God, God, God,
He said,
what have we done? What has this poor thing done that we are so sore beset? Is there fate amongst us still, sent down from the pagan world of old, that such things must be, and in such way? This poor mother, all unknowing, and all for the best as she think, does such thing as lose her daughter body and soul, and we must not tell her, we must not even warn her, or she die, then both die. Oh, how we are beset! How are all the powers of the devils against us?
Suddenly he jumped to his feet.
Come,
he said.
come, we must see and act. Devils or no devils, or all the devils at once, it matters not. We must fight him all the same.
He went to the hall door for his bag, and together we went up to Lucy's room. Once again, I drew up the blind, while Van Helsing went towards the bed. This time he did not start as he looked on the poor face with the same awful waxen pallor as before. He wore a look of stern sadness and infinite pity.
As I expected.
He murmured with that hissing inspiration of his which meant so much. Without a word, he went and locked the door, and then began to set out on the little table the instruments for yet another operation of transfusion of blood. I had long ago recognized the necessity and began to take off my coat, but he stopped me with a warning hand.
No,
He said,
today you must operate. I shall provide. You are weakened already.
As he spoke, he took off his coat and rolled up his shirt sleeve. Again the operation. Again the narcotic. Again some return of color to the ash cheeks and the regular breathing of heavy sleep. This time I watched while Van Helsing recruited himself and rested. Presently he took an opportunity of telling Mrs. Westenra that she must not remove anything from Lucy's room without consulting him, that the flowers were of medicinal value, and that the breathing of their odor was part of the system of care. Then he took over the care of the case himself, saying that he would watch this night and the next, and would tell me word when to come. After another hour, Lucy waked from her sleep, fresh and bright, and seemingly not much the worse for her terrible ordeal. What does it all mean? I am beginning to wonder if my long habit of life amongst the insane is beginning to tell upon my own brain.
Lucy Westenra's diary.
17th of September. 4 days and nights of peace. I am getting so strong again that I hardly know myself. It is as if I had passed through some long nightmare and had just awakened to see the beautiful sunshine and feel the fresh air of the morning around me. I have a dim half remembrance of long, anxious times of waiting and fearing, darkness in which there was not even the pain of hope to make present distress more poignant, and then long spells of oblivion, and the rising back to life as a diver coming up through a great breast of water. Since, however, Dr. Van Helsing has been with me, all this bad dreaming seems to have passed away. The noises that used to frighten me out of my wits, the flapping against the windows, the distant voices which seemed so close to me, the harsh sounds that came from I know not where and commanded me to do I not know what, have all ceased. I go to bed now without any fear of sleep. I do not even try to keep awake. I have grown quite fond of traveling, and a box full arrives for me every day from Haarlem. Tonight Dr. Van Helsing is going away as he has to be for a day in Amsterdam. But I need not be watched. I am well enough to be left alone. Thank God for mother's sake and the Arthurs, and for all our friends who have been so kind. I shall not even feel the change, for last night Dr. Van Helsing stepped in his chair a lot of the time. I found him asleep twice when I awoke, but I did not fear to go to sleep again, although the books or beds or something flapped almost angrier against the window panes.
The Pall Mall Gazette, 18th of September. The Escaped Wolf. Perilous adventure of our interviewer. Interview with the keeper in the zoological gardens.
After many inquiries and almost as many refusals, and perpetually using the words Pall Mall Gazette as a sort of talisman, I managed to find the keeper of the section of the zoological gardens in which the wolf department is included. Thomas Balder lives in one of the cottages in the enclosure behind the elephant house and was just sitting down to his tea when I found him. Thomas and his wife are hospitable folk, elderly and without children, and if the specimen I enjoyed of their hospitality be of the average kind, their lives must be pretty comfortable. The keeper would not enter on what we called business until supper was over, and we were all satisfied. Then, when the table was cleared and he had lit his pipe, he said,
Now, sir, you can go on and ask me what you want. Will excuse me refusing to talk of professional subjects of foreign years. I dip the wolves and the jackals and the hyenas in all our section that they afford I begin to ask them questions.
How do you mean ask them questions? I queried, wishful to get him into a talkative humor.
Eating of them over the head with a pole is one way, scratching of their ears in another, rangant as his flesh wants a bit of show off to the cause. I don't so much mind the first eating of the poor part for attracting their dinner, but I wait still they've had their sherry and coffee, so to speak, afore I tries on with the ear scratching. Mind you,
He added philosophically,
there's a deal of the same nature in us as in them dear enemies. Here's you are coming and asking of me questions about my business, and I that crump like that only for your blooming half quid I'd a seen you blowed fast for I'd answer. Not even when you ask me sarcastic like if I'd like you to ask the superintendent if you might ask me questions. Without offense, did I tell you to go to hell?
you did.
And when you said you'd report me for using obscene language that was eating me over the head, but the Archquid made that all right. I weren't a going to fight, so I waited for the food and did with my all as the wolves and lions and tigers does. But Lord Labier are, not that the old one has stuck a trunk of her tea cake in me and reads me out with her blooming old teapot, and her lit hop, you may scratch my ears for all your worth and won't even get a brawl out of me. Drive along with your questions. I know what you are coming at, that air escaped wolf.
Exactly. I want you to give me your view of it. Just tell me how it happened, and when I know the facts, I'll get you to say what you consider was the cause of it, and how you think the whole affair will end.
All right, Governor, this here is about the old story. That Airwolf, what we call Berserker, was one of three grey ones that came from Norway to Jamarax, which we bought off him 4 years ago. He was a nice, well-behaved wolf, and had never gave no trouble to talk of. I'm more surprised at him for wanting to get out nor any other animal in the place. But there, you can't trust wolves no more nor women.
Don't you mind him, sir?
Broke in Mrs. Tom with a cheery laugh.
I got with him the animal is so long that dashed if he ain't black old wolf himself. But there ain't no harm in him.
Well, sir, it was about 2 hours after feeding yesterday when I first heard my disturbance. I was mating up a litter in the monk house for a young puma which is here. But when I heard the yapping and howling, I came away straight. There was Berserker uttering like a mad thing at the bars as if he wanted to get out. There wasn't much people about that day, and close at hand was only one man, a tall thin chap with a hook nose and pointed beard with a few white hairs hung through it. He had a hard, cold look and red eyes, and I took a sort of mislife to him, for it seemed as if it was him as they was irritated at. He had white gloves on its ends, and he pointed out the animals to me and says, "Keeper, this horse seems upset at something." "Maybe it's you," says I, for I did not like the airs as he did himself. He didn't get angry, as I hoped he would, but he smiled a kind of insolent smile, with a mouth full of white, sharp teeth. "Oh no, they wouldn't like me," he says. "Oh yes, they would," says I, imitating of him. "They always like a bone or two to clean their teeth on about tea time, which you has a bag for." Well, it was an odd thing, but when the animals see us are talking, they lay down, and when I went over to Persiker, he left me stroke his ear, same as ever. Then their man came over, and worse but if he didn't put in his hand and stroke the old wolf's ears too. "Take care," says I, "Persiker is quick." "Never mind," he says, "I'm used to him. Are you in the business yourself?" I says, taking off my hat for a man what treats him wolves, etc., is a good friend to keepers. "No," says he, "not exactly in the business, but I have made pets of several." And with that he lifts his head as polite as a lion and walks away. Old Persiker kept looking after him till it was out of sight, and then went and lay down in a corner and wouldn't come out the whole evening. Well, last night, so soon as the moon was up, the wolves began a howling. There wasn't nothing for them to howl at. There wasn't no one near, except one that was evidently a cardinal duck somewhere out back of the gardens in the park road. Once or twice I went out to see that all was right, and it was, and then the howling stopped. Just before 12 o'clock, I just took a look around before turning in, and, bust me, was when I come opposite the old Basilica's cage, I see the rails broken and twisted about and the cage empty. And that's all I know for certain.
Did anyone else say anything?
One of our gardeners was coming home about that time from Harmony when he sees a big prairie dog coming out through the gardening edges. At least, so he says, but I don't keep much for it myself, for if he did, he never said a word about it to his missus when he got home, and it was only after the escape of the wolf was made known, and we had been up all night a hunting of the park for Persita that he remembered seeing anything. My own belief was that the harmony had got into his head.
Now, Mr. Pyder, can you account in any way for the escape of the wolf?
Well, sir,
He said, with a suspicious sort of modesty.
I think I can, but I don't know as how you'd be satisfied with the theory.
Certainly I shall. If a man like you, who knows the animals from experience, can't hazard a good guess at any rate, who is even to try?
Well then, sir, I account for it this way. It seems to me that a wolf escaped simply because he wanted to get out.
From the hearty way that both Thomas and his wife loved that to joke, I could see that it had done service before, and that the whole explanation was simply an elaborate sir. I couldn't cope in badinage with the worthy Thomas, but I thought I knew a surer way to his heart, so I said, "Now, Mr. Bardo, we'll consider that first half-sovereign worked off, and this brother of his is waiting to be claimed when you'd told me that you think will happen,"
Right you are, sir.
he said briskly.
You'll excuse me, I know for a chaffing of ye, but the old woman here winked at me, which was as much as telling me to go on.
Well, I never.
Said the old lady.
My opinion is this, that a wolf is aiding of somewheres. The gardener what didn't remember said he was a galloping no far faster than a horse could go, but I don't believe him, for you see, sir, wolves don't gallop no more nor dogs does, they not being bred that way. Wolf is a fine thing in a storybook, and I dare say when they get in packs and does be chewing something, that's more afraid than they is they can make a devil of a noise and chop it up, whatever it is. But Lord bless you, in real life a wolf is only a low creature, not half so clever or bored as a good dog, and not half a quarter so much fight in him. This one ain't being used to fighting or even to providing for himself, and more like he's somewhere round apart a hiding and a shivering off, and if he thinks at all wondering where he is to get his breakfast from. Or maybe he's got down Samaria and is in a coal cellar. My eye won't some cook get a rum stuffed when she sees his green eyes a shining at her out of the dark. If he can't get food, he's bound to look for it, and mayhap he may chest light on a butcher's shopping time. If he doesn't, and some nursemaid goes out walking, or with the soldier leaving of the infant in the perambulator, well, then I shouldn't be surprised if the census is one bobby the less. That's all.
I was handing him the half-sovereign when something came bobbing up against the window, and Mr. Builder's face beveled its natural length with surprise.
God bless me,
He said.
If there ain't what Berserker combat by himself.
He went to the door and opened it, a most unnecessary proceeding it seemed to me. I always thought that wild animal never looks so well as when some obstacle of pronounced durability is between us. A person's experience has intensified rather than diminished that idea. After all, however, there's nothing like custom, for neither Builder nor his wife thought any more of the wolf than I should of a dog. The animal itself was a peaceful and well-behaved, as that father of all picture wolves, Red Riding Hood's condom friend, whilst moving her confidence in masquerade. The whole scene was an unutterable mixture of comedy and pathos. The wicked wolf that for half a day had paralyzed London and set all the children in town shivering in their shoes was there in a sort of penitent mood and was received and petted like a sort of woodpine prodigal son. Old Builder examined him all over with most tender solicitude, and when he had finished with his penitent, said,
There, I knew the poor old chap would get into some kind of trouble. Didn't I say it all along? Here's his head all cut and full of book and glass. I been a getting over some blue inval or other. It's a shame people are allowed to top their voice with broken bottles. This is what come of it. Come along, Berserker.
He took the wolf and looked him up in a cage with a piece of meat that satisfied, in quantity at any rate, the elementary conditions of the fatted calf, and went off to report. I came off too to report the only exclusive information that is given today regarding the strange escapade at the zoo.
Dr. Seward's diary.
17th of September. I was anxious after dinner in my study, posting of my books, which, through press of other work and the many visits to see, had fallen suddenly into a rear. Suddenly, the door was burst open, and there rushed my patient with his face distorted with passion. I was thunderstruck, for such a thing as a patient getting of his own accord into the superintendent's study is almost unknown. Without an instant's notice, he made straight at me. He had a dinner knife in his hand, and as I saw he was dangerous, I tried to keep the table between us. He was too quick and too strong for me. However, for before I could get my balance, he had struck at me and cut my left wrist rather severely. Before he could strike again, however, I got in my right hand, and he was sprawling on his back on the floor. My wrist bled freely, and quite a little pool trickled onto the carpet. I saw that my friend was not intent on further effort, and occupied himself binding up my wrist, keeping a very eye on the prostrate figure all the time. When the attendants rushed in and returned our attention to him, his employment positively sickened me. He was lying on his belly on the floor, licking up, like a dog, the blood which had fallen from my wounded wrist. He was easily secured, and to my surprise, went with the attendants quite placidly, simply repeating over and over again,
The blood is the life. The blood is the life.
I cannot afford to lose blood just at present. I have lost too much of late for my physical good, and then the prolonged strain of Lucy's illness and its horrible phases is standing on me. I'm overexcited and weary, and I need rest, rest, rest. Happily, Van Helsing has not summoned me, so I need not forego my sleep. Tonight, I could not well do without it.
Telegram Van Helsing, Antwerp, to Seward, Carfax. Sent to Carfax, Sussex, as no county given, delivered late by 22 hours. 17th of September.
Do not fail to be at Hillingham tonight. If not watching all the time, frequently visit and see that flowers are as placed. Very important, do not fail. Shall be with you as soon as possible after arrival.
Dr. Seward's diary.
18th of September. Just off train to London. The arrival of Van Helsing's telegram filled me with dismay. A whole night lost, and I know my bitter experience what may happen in a night. Of course, it is possible that all may be well, but what may have happened? Surely there is some horrible doom hanging over us, that every possible accident should thwart us in all we try to do. I shall take this cylinder with me, and then I can complete my entry on Lucy's phonograph.
Memorandum left by Lucy Westenra.
17th of September, night. I write this and leave it to be seen, so that no one may by any chance get into trouble through me. This is an exact record of what took place tonight. I feel I am dying of weakness, and have barely strength to write, but it must be done if I die in the doing. I went to bed as usual, taking care that the flowers were placed as Dr. Van Helsing directed, and soon fell asleep. I was waked by the flapping at the window, which had begun after that sleepwalking on the cliff at Whitby, where Minna saved me, and which now I knew so well. I was not afraid. But I did wish that Dr. Seward was in the next room, as Dr. von Hessing said he would be, so that I might have called him. I tried to sleep, but I could not. Then there came to me the old fear of sleep, and I determined to keep awake. Perversely, sleep would try to come down, and I did not want it. So as I feared to be alone, I opened my door and called out, "Is there anybody there?" There was no answer. I was afraid to wake Mother, and so closed my door again. Then outside in the shrubbery I heard a sort of howl, like a dog's, but more fierce and deeper. I went to the window and looked out, but could see nothing except a big bat which had evidently been buffeting its wings against the window. So I went back to bed again, but determined not to go to sleep. Presently the door opened, and Mother looked in. Seeing by my moving that I was not asleep, she came in and sat by me. She said to me even more sweetly and softly than her wont,
I was uneasy about you, darling, and came in to see that you were all right.
I feared she might catch cold sitting there, and asked her to come in and sleep with me, so she came into bed and lay down beside me. She did not take off her dressing gown, for she said she would only stay a while and then go back to her own bed. As she lay there in my arms, and I in hers, the whipping and buffeting came to the window again. She was startled and a little frightened, and cried out.
What is that?
I tried to pacify her, and the glove succeeded, and she lay quiet. But I could hear her poor dear heart still beating terribly. After a while there was the howl out in the shrubbery, and shortly after there was a crash at the window, and a lot of broken glass was heard on the floor. The window blind blew back with the wind that charged in, and in the aperture of the broken panes there was the head of a pretty gaunt grey wolf. Mother cried out in a fright and struggled up into her sitting posture, and clutched wildly at anything that would help her. Amongst other things, she clutched the wreath of flowers that Dr. von Hansen easily spread on my wearing round my neck, and tore it away from me. For a second or two she sat up, pointing at the wolf, and there was a strange and horrible garbling in her throat. Then she fell away, as if struck with lightning, and her head hit my forehead, and made me dizzy for a moment or two. The room and all around seemed to spin around. I kept my eyes fixed on the window, but the wolf drew his head back, and the whole myriad of little specks seemed to come blowing in through the broken window, and wheeling and sobbing round like the pillar of dust that travelers describe when there is a simoon in the desert. I tried to stir, but there was a spell upon me, and dear mother's poor body, it seemed to grow cold already, for her dear heart had ceased to beat, bowed me down, and I remembered no more for a while. The time did not seem long, but very, very awful, till I recovered consciousness again. Somewhere near, a passing bell was tolling. The dogs all around the neighborhood were howling, and in our shrubbery, seemingly just outside, a nightingale was singing. I was dazed and stupid with pain and terror and weakness, but the sound of the nightingale seemed like the voice of my dead mother come back to comfort me. The sound seemed to have awakened the maids too, for I could hear their bare feet pattering outside my door. I called to them, and they came in, and when they saw what had happened, and what it was that lay over me on the bed, they screamed out. The wind rushed in through the broken window, and the door slammed to. They lifted up the body of my dear mother, and laid her, covered up with a sheet, and on the bed after I had got up. They were all so frightened and nervous that I directed them to go to the dining room and each have a glass of wine. The door flew open for an instant and closed again. The maids shrieked and then went in a body to the dining room, and I laid what flowers I had on my dear mother's breast. When they were there, I remembered that Dr. von Helsing had told me, but I did not like to remove them, and besides, I would have some of the servants to sit up with me now. I was surprised that the maids did not come back. I called them, but got no answer, so I went to the dining room to look for them. My heart sank when I saw what had happened. They all four lay helpless on the floor, bleeding heavily. The decanter of sherry was on the table half full, but there was a queer, acrid smell about. I was suspicious and examined the decanter. It smelled of laudanum. When looking on the sideboard, I found that the bottle which my mother's doctor uses for her, oh, did use, was empty. What am I to do? What am I to do? I am back in the room with mother. I cannot leave her, and I am alone, safe from the sleeping servants whom someone has drowned. Alone with the dead. I dare not go out, for I can hear the low howl of the wolf through the broken window. The air seems full of specks, floating and circling in the draught from the window, and the lights burn blue and dim. What am I to do? God, shield me from harm this night. I shall hide this paper in my breast, where they shall find it when they come to lay me out. My dear mother gone. It is time that I go too. Goodbye, dear Arthur, if I should not survive this night. God keep you, dear, and God help me.